Welcome to the first WRAN webinar of the fall season. Thanks for joining us. I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I have all of your phone lines muted. That's so we don't get a bunch of crazy background noise. If you do want to chime in during the presentation, feel free to put questions in the chat box at the bottom of your GoToTraining window, and we will get to those at the end. I'll also open up the phone lines at the end if you want to pose any questions that way. So today we're going to be looking into the connections between craft brewing and water conservation and rivers in the West. To help us do that, we have Danielle McPherson. She's the Water Resources Specialist and Project Manager at the WaterNow Alliance, who are a heavy hand behind the PureWater Brew Challenge. And we also have Chase Saraiva. He is the head brewer at the Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company. They were a contestant in the Arizona PureWater Brew Challenge, and they're also a strong partner of ours for our Birds and Beer program. So without anything else, I am going to pass things over to Danielle. Just give me a second to do that.
Can you see my screen?
There it is. You're good to go.
Great. Good afternoon. As Steve said, I'm Danielle McPherson with the WaterNow Alliance. WaterNow is a nonprofit organization that works with utilities throughout the West to advance sustainable water solutions. We are a partner on the Arizona PureWater Brew Challenge, and I'm excited to talk with you about this project today. So before we get going, I want to give you a brief background about how this project got started. In 2016, the Arizona Community Foundation held a Water Innovation Challenge that was meant to galvanize communities to develop solutions that advance the sustainability of Arizona's water future. My executive director was brought on by the Community Foundation to judge the competition, and WaterNow was asked to support the winning team as a project partner. The Arizona Community Foundation was specifically looking for projects that were replicable, scalable, and involve community partnerships. So as you can imagine, the winner of the competition was the Arizona PureWater Brew Challenge. I have the what, why, and how up here to give you a little overview of the project, but also this is the agenda for my talk, so you know what you can expect. So what is the PureWater Brew Challenge? Well, it's a beer competition, but it's also a statewide public outreach campaign about water reuse. Essentially, we took reclaimed water and ran it through an advanced water purification system to make pure water. We then gave that pure water to Arizona craft breweries to make beer for statewide competition. The goal of the project was to engage the public in conversations and education about water reuse and hopefully improve public perceptions. We also wanted to demonstrate that potable reuse really can be made safe for human consumption. So how did we propose to do this? Well, aside from beer, we traveled the state engaging the public in conversations, like I said, and the project finally culminated in the competition that took place at the Water Reuse Symposium in Phoenix last month. So I mentioned that Arizona, the Water Prize was looking for projects with strong community partnerships. Well, we had a lot of partners, from government agencies to private corporations, consulting firms, NGOs, and academic institutions. And then, of course, we had our brewers. So back to describing the project. With the help of our project partners, we built this high-profile advanced water purification system. You can see that it started off as just a simple shipping container, and we installed the 4-step treatment process inside. I'll explain more about that treatment process in a minute. Then the truck traveled to reclamation facilities in Tucson, Phoenix, and Flagstaff, taking their reclaimed water and using it to make pure water that meets or exceeds drinking water standards. So this diagram describes the different treatment processes that we used. Like I said, the source water is from reclamation facilities that have treated the municipal wastewater to the maximum standards in Arizona. This reclaimed water would otherwise be used for landscape or agricultural irrigation, snowmaking, fire protection, groundwater recharge, and other uses. So from the reclamation facility, the water enters the truck and goes through membrane filtration, reverse osmosis, ultraviolet disinfection, and then finally carbon filtration. What's left is pure water. Now, throughout the treatment process, The team was sampling the water to ensure that each of these systems are working properly, and once the process is finished, the water goes through extensive analytical testing to make sure that it's safe to drink. If anyone is interested in receiving a copy of this diagram, I'll post my email at the end of the webinar. You can just email me and I'll email you a copy. So in addition to treating water, this truck served as an excellent educational tool that we could use when talking with the public about this project and generally about water in Arizona. Between the kickoff in May and the final beer competition in September, the project participated in 10 community events in 7 different cities. The types of events range from beer festivals to block parties, sporting events to outdoor enthusiast expos. The idea was to connect with as many different segments of the community as possible. At these events, we offered tours of the truck, educating the people about the treatment process we were using. As you can see from the picture on the right, people could walk up inside the truck to see the process up close. We also handed out swag at these events like shirts and beer mugs and had a short survey people could fill out. Results on the survey are still being reviewed and will be published in a peer-reviewed article later this year. So we treated water and we engaged the public in conversations about water reuse, and then we had a beer competition. 26 brewers in total took part in the competition. Chase, as you know, will talk to you about his experience in a minute. Dragon Brewing took first place with their clear water pills. Arizona Wilderness took second place with their PureWater Hop Double IPA. And Crooked Tooth Brewing took the People's Choice Award at our sampling event with their Cloud People Tamarind Sour Brown Ale. It's a little tongue twister. All right, so why is this project important? Well, let's take a step back and talk about water recycling. There are 2 types of water reuse, potable and non-potable. Non-potable beneficial uses include landscape and agricultural irrigation, cooling towers, toilet flushing, basically anything that's not drinking or ingesting the water. Potable reuse is when you take reclaimed water and run it through additional treatment to make it safe to drink. Right now, this happens through indirect potable reuse, which happens when reclaimed water is injected into the ground or into a surface water reservoir, where it passes through additional environmental buffers before it is taken back out and treated again at a water treatment facility and then distributed to the community. Direct potable reuse, which currently is not permitted in Arizona, would involve treatment of municipal wastewater at a reclamation facility. The reclaimed water would then be transferred to a water treatment plant where it would undergo advanced purification, like what we were doing on our beer truck, and then send out directly in the distribution system to the community. To be clear, this process skips the step of injecting the water into the ground or surface water reservoirs where it would go through those environmental buffers. But if you think about it, all water is recycled. So we can take a minute and consider the urban water cycle. So water on the earth evaporates and fills our sky with clouds until it rains and returns to refill lakes and streams and aquifers. And then our municipal water systems draw on these rivers and aquifers and treat it for distribution. We consume the water, and what we don't use goes down the sink. And that water is then treated at a wastewater treatment facility where 3 things can happen. First, the water can be released back into the environment, where it is used by downstream communities until it goes into the ocean. The second option is the water can be injected into groundwater aquifers or surface water reservoirs where it's later used by the same community. Or third, the reclamation facility can send that water out for non-potable beneficial uses. The cycle works just fine until the water in the lakes and streams becomes more scarce. Then we need new sources of water to meet demand. That's when direct potable reuse becomes an important part of the equation. So Arizona has done a remarkable job protecting its water resources, and most cities have a sufficient supply for the foreseeable future. However, effective water management and planning now will ensure that Arizona is ready and capable of providing safe water when needed in the future. Currently, 39% of Arizona's water comes from the Colorado River. As you've probably heard, there's a lot of demand for this water. And in fact, the water that flows through this river is already over-allocated. So if Arizona can develop a locally controlled supply of water, cities are in a better position to plan for the future. So as I mentioned, Arizona has done a great job managing their water resources. So I just want to take a minute to look at 2 different communities or areas in the state. in central Arizona, 82% of all effluent that's generated is put to beneficial uses. 22% of reclaimed water is used for power generation. That water is going to Palo Verde nuclear plant, where they use 100% of reclaimed water for cooling operations. 22% goes to agriculture, 21% is used for recharging aquifers, and 11% is used for specific environmental projects. So over in Flagstaff, 100% of all wastewater that's generated is reused during the summer months. That's when the demand is the greatest, particularly for irrigation. So 50% of all the reclaimed water used in Flagstaff goes to watering golf courses. 16% goes to industrial uses. 8% is reused in institutional organizations. This is primarily the Northern Arizona University, where 80% of their lawns are watered with reclaimed water. 6% goes to commercial use, and another 6% for turf watering. So I mentioned that direct potable reuse isn't currently allowed in Arizona. However, the Department of Environmental Quality is currently reviewing the water reuse rules and will likely come out with regulations allowing direct potable reuse by the end of this year. So why direct potable reuse? What are some arguments for allowing this? Well, as I mentioned earlier, potable reuse can provide a city with a sustainable and reliable source of drinking water. Direct potable reuse doesn't require new pipelines or a dedicated distribution system. So you've probably seen or heard of purple pipe that's used to distribute non-potable reclaimed water. We color it purple so that people know not to drink it. However, installing these pipes is very expensive and requires digging up streets. Advanced water purification can also be cost-effective compared to other solutions. So some people ask about desalination as an option for securing new sources of water. For a landlocked state like Arizona, though, this can be really difficult because of the salty waste that's produced in the process. Data from a PureWater program down in San Diego also showed that desalination requires 50% more energy compared to purifying reclaimed wastewater because of the high salt content. Similarly, desalination produces 46% more greenhouse gases than the purification process that we're proposing. Most communities in Arizona have a reliable source of water for the foreseeable future, like I mentioned. However, some communities that have limited groundwater and surface water may be looking at options to secure new water resources. When considering the cost of importing water from far away, advanced water purification might be the most cost-effective and sustainable option. Think about the cost of building a pipeline or a canal to transport that water and the energy needed to move it. So the challenge to realizing direct potable reuse is not the technology. Through demonstration projects like ours and extensive analytical testing, we know that advanced water purification can make reclaimed water safe to drink. The biggest hurdle is going to be public perceptions and getting people over the ick factor. That's really the purpose of this project. We're challenging local residents, community groups, environmental organizations, and local businesses to learn more about their water resources and water reuse so they're better informed about the technologies that are available to make reclaimed water safe for drinking. So if you recall at the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned that the Community Foundation was looking for projects that are replicable and scalable. Well, you might be asking what's next for potable reuse in Arizona, or perhaps you're wondering if your city will start using pure water to augment existing water supplies. While we do know that the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality will likely come out with rules at the end of the year establishing standards for potable reuse, but as I mentioned, most cities in Arizona have done a fantastic job managing their water supply, so it's unlikely that there will be change immediately. But with approved regulations for potable reuse, cities will have an additional tool available to them to expand their water supply portfolio in a way that doesn't rely on importing water from far away. We on the Pure Brew team want to continue the outreach and education for the public. There's many other cities that are also and states that are also considering regulations for potable reuse, like Texas and California. So perhaps next year we'll have Arizona brewers versus California brewers or Colorado brewers. There's just a lot of options for this project to scale up. So if you're interested in seeing where we go from here, please stay tuned. You can follow the Arizona PureWater Brew Challenge on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Put our hashtags and links here at the bottom of the page. And with that, that's the end of my presentation on the Pure Brew project, and Chase Saraiva will be talking about his experience.
Good deal. Thank you, Danielle. We're really excited about this project. By promoting potable reuse, we open up some water that would be otherwise being pulled from our rivers and streams, and it kind of leaves room for WRAN to advocate for environmental uses of that water. So we appreciate what you're doing. Give me 1 second and I will pass things over to Chase. You with us, Chase?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. The screen is coming your way.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yep, we got you.
Got it. All right, so here we go. Like Stephen and Danielle said, my name is Chase Saraiva. I'm the head brewer at Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company. I just want to start off by saying it's a pleasure to speak to everyone here about the PureWater project and then some of our efforts beyond the PureWater project for some water conservation we're doing. So just kind of starting off with a mission statement here. Oops, hold on 1 second. Let's try this again. All right, so back on track. So the mission statement, I'll read it just in case we have some people calling in that don't have access to a computer. But for Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company, we have a true passion for the craft of brewing, and it is the passion which stems from the owner's exploration of the vastly diverse state of Arizona. They allow their love for Arizona to influence their vision for creating high quality, artfully crafted beers. And this passion has turned into a mission in which highlighting Arizona's agricultural community is a root cause. It is the essence of naturalism and conservation that truly excites this brewery. And having worked there for about 1.5 years now, it's absolutely true. And it's kind of eminent as soon as you walk into the brewery, just with the way that the brewery is designed. And then if you dig further into the company, just the outreach into local farms and things we'll be talking about here in a second is truly incredible. So then, who is Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company beyond just the mission statement? So it was founded by Jonathan Buford and Pat Ware in 2013. I was actually voted the best new brewery of the year by Rate Beer in 2014. There's a heavy focus on locally foraged ingredients. Actually, the picture in this slide is of some blackberries that we went and foraged about 1.5 months ago up in northern Arizona that we're going to be using in a beer within the next couple months. And we also work very directly with local farmers for both brewery and restaurant ingredients. We'll be coming into citrus season here pretty soon, so lemons are going to be coming available. We'll use lemons and saisons. We bring all this fruit and citrus in-house, process it in-house, and then actually put it in the beer. So we're really dedicated to working with farmers and supporting them so they can support us. So then Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company and the AZ PureWater project. I oftentimes, I do feel guilty about talking about our involvement in the project because it was very easy for us, really. A lot of the hard work that was done by the team for Arizona PureWater. Danielle and her associates really put in a lot of effort to make this happen, and we just kind of received the water, treated it a little bit, and kind of went about our normal duties. But just a little bit about why we decided to get involved. So, we heard about this project in Washington, D.C. during the Craft Brewers Conference, and took a pretty good interest in participating. Obviously, it seems pretty in line with some of our business philosophies. And brewing is very water intensive. So if there's any way that we can help, water in more sustainable ways or be a kind of companion in getting the word out about new water conservation actions and possibilities, we definitely wanted to put our foot in and help out. We live in one of the driest areas of the country. I think we have about 335 days of dry weather. We have less than 10 inches per year of actual rainfall, so we do live in a desert, so water is a concern for us. Also, improve public perception of this process and the water that's produced from it. A lot of people hear wastewater and they think just disgusting, gross, but if there was a way that we could help improve public perception and maybe reach some individuals that might not have a favored opinion on this process and turn them the other way, it would definitely be a goal of ours to do so. And like I said, it just had a really strong alignment with some of our core business philosophies. So then, how our brewery actually used the water. So we heard about it, we signed up, participated, but then we received the water in-house. And so what you see here is actually the water characteristics that we received about the pure water that we got in-house to brew with. So if you kind of just take a quick look here, you see the pH is about 7.6, slightly basic, but pretty typical brewing water pH. You also have very low levels of calcium, which we look for. You can go down the list, chloride, low chloride levels, which we look for, low sulfate, low sodium. A little bit of chlorine, which was really the only thing we had to kind of manipulate in our process to ensure there wasn't any chlorine in our beer. But when you look at this, it really kind of triggered us that this is almost what we brew with on a regular basis. We use a reverse osmosis water filtration system, and these numbers are very, very similar to the numbers that we use typically. So in all reality, it was kind of like brewing with the water we use on a normal day-to-day schedule. The only thing that was different about it was that chlorine, like I said. So, what we did, there are a couple different ways you can remove chlorine from water, but we boiled the water to remove the chlorine and put it back in our reservoirs and brewed a batch of beer with it. So then what we brewed and why, and if anybody's looking at the computer and wants to put a face to the name, that's actually me brewing the batch of beer a couple months ago. And on the right, just a picture of hops, because we did brew a double IPA. So we brewed a double IPA, put Citra, Mosaic, Galaxy hops in it. And we did this for a couple reasons. One being a double IPA, IPAs in general, hops right now are kind of the king of the craft brewing world. So we knew brewing the style that automatically had a strong affinity to the craft brewing culture would immediately draw people to the beer itself. Also, a double IPA, given the timeline, we needed to extend our fermentation a little bit. A double IPA actually has a little bit more alcohol in it, so fermentation was a little bit longer and actually allowed us to provide a fresher product to the judges on the judging day. But by brewing this double IPA, we're really kind of hoping to access and kind of make this beer apparent and this project apparent to more people than if we were to brew something a little bit less glamorous. So then some outcomes of the project. So reactions to the beer were overwhelmingly favorable. We had a lot of education going on in our company for this project and during its span on tap. As long as we as the brewers could give information to the people serving the beer, our bartenders, our servers, our managers at the restaurant, putting up signs in the restaurant, and putting up little pamphlets everywhere so people could be educated on what this actually was. As long as we could provide that information to people, it really changed the perception of this product from something like, oh wait, what, you brewed with wastewater? What? To, oh wow, that's really cool, that's amazing, you're right, we do need to focus on a little bit of sustainable water practices. Educating them on the actual process definitely helped, and really turned some people in the right direction. Of course, you had the few sticklers that just couldn't get over the fact that, it was brewed with this reclaimed water. But, for the most part, it was very, very positive. We had the chance to pour at the Water Symposium in downtown Phoenix, which was great to have all the breweries that actually participated in this project and competition around us, serving all of the beer that we made with this water to a bunch of water aficionados, if you will, that were in town for learning about water, learning about different filtration practices, or just anything they can do with this water symposium. And then the brewing contest, we placed second, which was incredible, behind Dragoon. And I think everyone there made incredible beers, and it really kind of opened people's eyes, especially in Arizona, around their communities, to what was able to be done with this water. And then also, beyond the contest, beyond our immediate pub, it has given us a lot of opportunities such as this to kind of advocate for this water sustainability and give a spotlight to some of the other projects we're working on in northern Arizona. So then we'll talk about that, some water conservation actually beyond the brewery. So you're going to hear me talk about a couple of these entities a little bit throughout the next portion of this presentation. So we'll just start I just wanted to give you a brief outline about who they were and what they do. So we have the Nature Conservancy, which is in over 70 different countries and really works on conserving lands and waters on which all life depends. Kim Schoenig, who is actually the manager of the Verde River program for TNC, got together with someone from Sinagua Malt, being Chip Norton, and they were really trying to think about how to tackle some of the problems in the Verde Valley. She wanted to do something for the river and the land, but not do what's called buy and dry, where you buy land, dry it up so it's not being used for any type of irrigation or crops. Really try to find a creative solution with Chip Norton, the president of Sinagua Malt, to kind of tackle, like I said, the issues for the Verde River running low, especially in the summer. So, with the plan of some crop switching, they were able to have some healthy rivers flow beside some really profitable and thriving farms. So, I mentioned Sinagua Malt. So Chip Norton, who's the president of Sinagua Malt, it's actually a benefit corporation in Arizona whose profits will all be dedicated to water conservation. Chip Norton comes from a business background and is a very, very avid conservationist, especially for rivers. So, what they did is they did some crop switching to some less water-intensive summer crops, like barley. And then Hauser and Hauser Farms. So Hauser and Hauser Farms are really the farmland, and some of the opportunity was given to them to grow this barley instead of alfalfa or corn, which are very water intensive. Their family has been farming for about 6 generations. They've also started changing some of their irrigation practices from flood to drip irrigation. And flood irrigation, in case anyone is unfamiliar with this, is where you'll basically flood a land with water, allow that water to seep into the land, giving nutrients to the crops. Drip irrigation is a little bit different. It doesn't actually involve a flooding, so it's a lot less water intensive practice. Both Sinagua Malt and Hauser Farms are located in the Verde Valley as well. The Nature Conservancy, like I said, is a global entity, so they're kind of located all across the world. Just a little background on all of the people we are working with here. So then it occurred to me while I was creating this presentation, we're talking about crop switching from alfalfa and corn to barley. Maybe not everyone knows what barley is. So there are 4 main ingredients in beer. One of them is barley, and it's what gives you the sugars that yeast can ferment into alcohol to actually produce beer. Before the yeast does this, it's just kind of like a sugar barley tea. But barley is generally grown in a field, and it's harvested and then goes through a malting process. And then it's delivered to the brewery, where we use it in a fashion to extract the sugars from the grain and turn that into beer. It is the main reason for the color in beer. So, the stout, something very black, versus a pilsner, something very light, is just differences in barley. I'm not going to get too into the technical side of things here. I just wanted to kind of give you a background on what this plant actually is. So then we're going to go on to some crop replacement. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but talking with Sinagua Malt and the Nature Conservancy, they came up with this idea where they could replaced some corn and alfalfa crops to barley. So the water requirements of corn and alfalfa are pretty extreme. So corn will require about 3.5 acre-feet of water per acre from May to July. And those who aren't familiar with an acre-foot, it's basically, it's roughly 326 gallons of water, but it's the amount of water you would need to cover an acre of land with 1 foot of water. Corn also requires the most water in June, when the water in the Verde River is actually at its lowest. Alfalfa gets even worse, about 5 acre-feet of water per acre. And they're actually, cotton is right around the same. So the benefits of barley crops in Arizona. Barley actually requires about 3 acre-feet of water per acre, which you may think, 3 versus 3.5, what's the big deal here? However, there are some other factors that go into this. Because the barley is actually planted and harvested before the summer months when the water is the lowest, more than half of the water required to grow this crop comes from moisture saturated in the soil from previous rains during the winter. So the barley is grown with some previous rains. It requires a lot less irrigation from the farmers, and then it's harvested before the Verde River drops below or to its lowest levels in the summer. So then we have just a little chart here from the Nature Conservancy. The blue line actually represents the cubic feet per second, which is the stream flow of the Verde River. And then we have some kind of numbers about the use of water per crop. So the ones to kind of focus on here for barley are going to be the orange ones. So you see, January kind of goes up to May and then takes a huge dip in June. Whereas alfalfa and corn, the green and the yellow, continue to climb. And during those very, very water intensive months of the summer, continue to just gouge the river of water. So switching over these crops obviously has a huge impact on the river. So then why is this river so important? Danielle talked a little bit about the Colorado River, and 39% of Arizona's water comes from the Colorado River, where, well, the Verde River is one of the main tributaries of the Colorado River. So it springs actually from the ground about 25 miles north of Prescott, and then runs down to Phoenix through some private, state, federal, and actual tribal lands. And once it gets to Phoenix, it's supplying about 1.5 million residents with as much as a quarter of their drinking water in a year. So it's a very, very crucial river to just providing drinking water to these areas, Prescott, Sedona, the Verde Valley, Phoenix itself. Also the habitat that's around it. So the Verde River is an extremely important river for Arizona in terms of the maintenance and recovery of several threatened and endangered native fish. And there's, hundreds of migratory bird species that depend on the Verde Riverside trees and vegetation. So if we were able to increase this, or at least, keep it flowing throughout these months, we can really see an increase in this habitat, or at least sustain the habitats that are there. Also, just economy. Farmers need water to grow crops. So if we can ensure that there's more water in the river year-round, they're going to be able to be more profitable. Also, recreation. There are tons of kayakers, hikers, fishers that like to visit this area, and if the water runs dry, well, no one's going to come up there. So there's an economic impact as well here. So then, just to kind of touch on a little bit of a progress report here. So last year, there was a 15-acre test crop, and the barley was then shipped out of state. The state distributed to a couple select breweries. We were able to get some of this barley along with Wren House and a couple others in the area, and did some trials with it. And what we did was we brewed a beer called Connection Saison with all Arizona-grown barley and Arizona-grown hops. It's kind of at that moment we realized that this was 100% feasible and doable This barley performed really well. It was some of the most aromatic smelling barley we've ever used in a mash, and it kind of really gave us an opportunity and got us excited about taking this forward into the next step. So fast forward another year, and we actually have about 144 acres of barley planted, and it actually has been harvested, and we are waiting on the malting facility to get up and running. It's currently in the process of being built. We'll later this year malt the barley, and then even later this year or early next year, use Arizona grown and malted barley, maybe for the first time in recent history, to brew some beer with it. So it's a very exciting time for the brewing industry in Arizona, as well as the Verde River and conservation efforts that have been in place up there. So just to give you an example, it's estimated that the 144 acres that have been switched from corn and alfalfa to barley have saved about 45 million gallons of water from leaving the river during the summer low points. Something else that Hauser and Hauser are doing is actually they've started planting some carrots. I just kind of like to throw that in there too, that it's not just barley that can be a good crop switch. Carrots are actually one of them as well. So then I kind of touched on the future of the project as well, but moving on throughout the malting stages, if we can get more of these crops to switch to alfalfa, or switch from alfalfa and corn to barley, there's a statistic that says, if 1/10 of the valley's crops were to change over to barley, it would drop summertime irrigation demand by almost 200 million gallons of water, which is pretty incredible. So, the end result, Verde River gets more flow, farmers get access to an incredible local market, and we, the brewers, get barley with the tide of the land, which is something we definitely all want. And that's about it. The only thing I guess I'd have left to say is, the Arizona PureWater team did an excellent job, and we're very thankful to be a part of that. And it really has been kind of a springboard for inspiration, I feel, and should be a springboard for inspiration. You don't have to be a multi-billion-dollar company or a huge entity to try and make some small switches to impact a large amount of either water conservation or sustainability any which way. So yeah, thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chase. And just so everybody knows, Chase was joining us from the airport mid-travel. So if you're questioning Wilderness's dedication to this cause, don't. So I'm going to steal control back here really quick. All right, and before we jump into questions, I just want to make a few shameless plugs really quick. The first is for our Western Rivers Brewers Council. I think from this webinar you can tell that Audubon is really excited about the connections that are growing between craft brewing and river conservation. So this is a group of brewers in Arizona and Colorado that have stood up to help us get the word out about the Western Rivers Action Network by bringing their customers on board, and also by speaking up with us, kind of getting the voice of small businesses into WRAN's voice, reaching out to a lot of our policymakers here in Arizona. That is a voice that carries a lot of weight, and we really appreciate having them on board. Secondly, if you are interested in this work, if you want to maybe taste some of Wilderness's brews and learn a little bit more about what Audubon Arizona is up to, join us on the third Thursday of every month here at the Rio Salado Center for our Birds and Beer event. We have one more webinar coming up. This one is going to be on the 25th, same time, same place. The topic is going to be restoration on the lower Colorado River Delta and some of the implications of Minute 323, the new agreement between the US and Mexico over the use of Colorado River water. And lastly, of course, if you have not already done so, please sign up for the Western Rivers Action Network so we can continue to keep you up to date on where your voice is the most powerful. With that, I'm going to open it up to questions. So let me turn on your phones, Danielle and Chase. All right, you should both be on.
Yep.
Cool. So let me scroll up in the chat box a little bit. Danielle, I think the first question was for you. Danielle Woolen asks, I'm curious about the power supply for the filtration trailer. Many of the filtration methods you used are very energy intensive. Does the trailer have a high output generator?
When the truck is actually treating water, we do hook it up to AC power at the reclamation facility. And that's actually something that we were interested in monitoring. We weren't able to get that these meters put on the truck in time for the project, but it's definitely something that cities are interested in learning more about if they're going to add these processes onto their existing reclamation facilities, or sorry, into their water treatment facilities. You know, what is the energy requirement for that for them?
All right, thank you. Next one here is for Chase. Chase, do you know if switching from corn, alfalfa, cotton over to barley affects the money farmers receive as income from the land? In other words, is the value of planting barley for the year the same as planting corn, etc.?
I cannot speak on whether it is exactly the same. I do know that it is an advantageous crop for them. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly about financials, but you know, with the market in Arizona being so, desolate for barley, obviously, they're definitely approaching something and going to a niche sector where I believe there is going to be a demand. As long as this product is a great Arizona product, it would make sense for Arizona breweries to use it instead of buying it from the Pacific Northwest, or buying malt from Germany, incurring all those shipping fees. It's kind of an obvious thing to me, and I hope a lot of other breweries feel the same way, that if you can get a locally grown product from your backyard that is just as good as some of these other products, if not better, why not? I mean, it just makes sense. So I think there's a couple things there. Obviously, it is advantageous for the farmers to do this crop switch, and financially, whether it is above or the same, I'm not positive. But also they're entering a market that really is almost untapped in Arizona.
Cool, thank you for that, Chase. The next one's not really a question, but from Trisha, just want to let everyone know that the Brew Challenge truck is going to be in Bisbee next weekend. So if you guys are in Southern Arizona, you should go check it out at the 1000 Beer Festival, again in Bisbee. Next one's from Tice Saplee. It's for you, Danielle. I know you mentioned that there's the possibility of approving potable reuse by the end of this year. And being all about action here at the West Brewers Action Network, we were just curious if there is any way we can help push that along, or if you know any more about the process there on how that's getting approved.
Yeah, so I know that the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality has been going through a 2 or 3 year process looking at a number of different aspects about potable reuse. One of them is specifically about public perceptions. And to be honest, I'm not sure if the public comment period has ended and how that was incorporated, but I can do some research, and if you want to email me, my email was on the presentation, which I think will be available after this, and I can get answers for you for that.
Cool, thanks, Danielle. Only thing we've got left is to ask for one more plug from Rob Fulmer. He's the director of the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild. He just wanted us to mention that Saddle Mountain Saddle Mountain Brewery won a gold medal at this year's Great American Beer Festival. And that was a brew that was created with PureWater. So I think that speaks pretty well to the quality of that water and the ability to brew with it. So thank you for that, Rob.
Yeah, we were really
excited.
Just congratulations to Saddle Mountain Brewing. I also wanted to let people know that the beer truck will also be at Career Days in Tucson, Arizona on the 24th and 25th, I believe. So if you're in that area and you can't make it down to Bisbee, come check us out in Tucson.
Very cool. Well, I think that is it then. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you especially to Chase and Danielle for speaking on these topics to the network. And until next time, thank you.
Thanks, guys.